Welcome to The Debate. Imagine for a second you are a recent university graduate. You're stepping into your very first real corporate job, and an automated management algorithm terminates your employment because you deviated from a standard workflow by 2 steps to solve a client issue.
Right, a creative solution that just didn't fit the statistical model.
Exactly. So who is the boss in that scenario? Is it you or is it the machine?
That is the big question.
It is. When we look at the fourth industrial revolution, what we generally refer to as the AI boom, we're dealing with a fundamental shift in how work gets done. And that brings us to the central question we are unpacking today.
Yeah, specifically looking through the lens of young talent entering the workforce.
Right. Does artificial intelligence fundamentally threaten human employment and autonomy by replacing these young workers, or does it primarily act as like an augmenting technology? One that elevates their capabilities, increases their productivity, and ultimately empowers their agency.
And we are grounding this entire discussion in recent academic literature. We're looking at foresight studies projecting out to the 2050 horizon, the taxonomy of conjoined agency, and the actual job automation forecasts.
Right, and I'll be taking the position that AI is, at its core, an augmenting tool. If you look at the rigorous foresight studies, the fear of mass unemployment is largely a modern myth. It's really overblown. Just as historical automation empowered workers by removing physical drudgery, AI removes cognitive drudgery. So for university students entering the market, because AI leaves the ultimate intent in human hands, it's going to make them hyper-productive. It elevates them.
And, well, I come at it from a very different perspective. Even without achieving some mythical, sci-fi superintelligence, narrow AI is already fundamentally altering the reality of the workplace today.
Okay, but how?
Through the transfer of what researchers call conjoined agency. Machines are increasingly exercising intentionality over work protocols. And this doesn't just displace young workers, it alienates them. It strips away their decision-making power right out of college. When you hand over the authority of how a job is done to an algorithm, you are witnessing the literal mechanization of the human being.
Okay, well, let's start with the sheer panic around job replacement, because I think we need to ground this in the actual data. If you're listening, you've probably heard the terrifying statistic from that landmark Frey and Osborne study.
The 47% number.
Right, the one predicting that 47% of jobs in the United States were at high risk of disappearing through automation. I mean, that's nearly half the workforce. And for a college student, that sounds like structural obsolescence before they even get a diploma.
It's a terrifying prospect.
It is, but we really need to look at how they arrived at that number. They evaluated which tasks could in principle be automated. But as we know, a task is not a job.
It's an important distinction, I'll grant you that. But if you automate enough tasks, the job itself fundamentally changes. Or, it just disappears entirely.
But the mechanism of a job, especially an entry-level professional job, is a highly complex bundle of responsibilities. Think about a junior supply chain manager fresh out of undergrad. AI can absolutely optimize a delivery route or forecast inventory shortages.
Right, discrete tasks.
Exactly, discrete tasks. But the AI cannot negotiate a contract dispute with a delayed vendor. It can't read the emotional temperature of a frustrated client on a Zoom call. The Arnett study corrected Frey and Osborne's blind spot by analyzing whole job profiles, not just isolated tasks.
Mm-hmm.
And when they looked at the bundle of tasks that make up a real human job, the number of fully automatable jobs plummets to just 9%.
Well, 9%.
9%. And even then, it isn't always economically viable for a company to completely replace that 9%.
Okay, but that 9% still represents millions of livelihoods globally. But more importantly, I think, focusing solely on total job elimination, it sort of misses the insidious nature of what's happening to the remaining 91%.
How is it insidious?
Because the assumption is that since a job isn't entirely eliminated, the worker's fine, the graduate is fine.
Well, historically, they have been more than fine. Previous waves of industrialization automated the vast majority of grueling physical labor, and the result wasn't permanent mass unemployment. In fact, if you look at the systematic study by the European Commission between 1995 and 2015, they found that automation actually had a positive impact on employment in European manufacturing.
Yeah, but we are simply moving from automating physical labor to automating cognitive labor. AI is assisting these young talents.
I'm sorry, I just don't buy that the historical comparison holds up here. I really don't. Why not? The underlying economic mechanics are the same.
Because the comparison breaks down when you realize this revolution, IR 4.0, it touches cognitive capabilities. We're talking about machine learning, natural language processing, deep learning, computer vision. We are not just talking about a loom or, automating a repetitive assembly line movement. We are talking about high stakes, highly complex cognitive tasks. Let's look beyond a supply chain manager to the medical field, where the stakes are quite literally life and death.
You are referring to the surgical robotics studies.
Exactly. At the Children's National Medical Center, an autonomous robot performed soft tissue surgery on a pig's bow. Now, soft tissue is incredibly difficult to work with because it moves. It changes shape unpredictably. But the machine used digital signal processing and computer vision to adapt in real time.
Right.
And it stitched the tissue together. And the researchers noted that the robot finished the job better with more precision than a human surgeon. A machine outperformed a highly trained human specialist in a dynamic environment. That proves AI is moving well beyond simple tool use or basic cognitive drudgery. It's encroaching directly on expert domain. So what happens to the young medical resident trying to learn those skills?
I see why you think that, and it's a dramatic example, but let me give you a slightly different perspective on it. I look at that incredible surgical achievement, and I don't see a replacement doctor. I don't see a threat to the medical resident. I see an incredibly sophisticated scalpel.
A scalpel? A scalpel that adapts its own movements and stitches better than the surgeon holding it? That's a bit of a stretch.
Yes, precisely because the surgeon isn't being replaced. Their capacity is being augmented. We have to look at the actual mechanism of that study. The human medical team supervised the robot. They defined the overarching intention of the procedure. The robot had absolutely no concept of why the pig needed surgery in the first place.
Well, sure.
It couldn't consult with a patient, review a holistic medical history, or weigh clinical treatment options. As long as the human defines the intention and supervises the outcome, the technology remains strictly assisting. It is an expansion of a young surgeon's capability, overcoming the physical limitations of human hands.
But you are relying on the assumption that AI will always simply wait for our overarching instructions, that it will always remain this subordinate tool. And while it's true this specific surgical robot doesn't have human consciousness, the constant anxiety in the foresight literature about the singularity, it shows a deep, persistent awareness that machines are rapidly gaining the capacity to manage their own intentions.
Wait, but that singularity narrative is exactly what researchers explicitly identify as a myth. The technological singularity, this whole idea of an immortal, perfectly autonomous machine that surpasses human intelligence, it's rooted in human imagination, not trustworthy data.
Well,
It's what scholars classify as apocalyptic AI, artificial general intelligence, AGI, which aims to reproduce comprehensive human cognitive abilities, is entirely in its infancy. It relies far more on science fiction than on hard engineering right now. We are dealing strictly with narrow AI, NAI.
right, narrow AI.
And NAI is designed to solve complex but ultimately bounded problems. By design, intentions will always need to be defined by humans, completely ruling out the possibility of total human replacement.
Okay, I agree that the singularity is a myth. True AGI is highly hypothetical and unlikely to happen in our immediate future. But that is exactly my point.
How is that your point?
Because the singularity myth is a massive distraction. It acts as this smokescreen that hides the very real immediate consequences of narrow AI on the current generation of students.
How so? If narrow AI is bounded and lacks general intelligence, how does it pose an immediate structural threat to their autonomy?
Because narrow AI doesn't need to be self-aware to cause massive disruption. We don't need a super intelligent robot overlord to see massive socioeconomic displacement. We just need algorithms that are hyper-efficient at specific functions.
Okay, sure, they're efficient.
Think about the systemic vulnerabilities.
A highly optimized, autonomous, but narrow AI managing an electric grid or, say, a nuclear power plant, it can cause catastrophic damage if its bounded parameters encounter an edge case it wasn't trained for. But more insidiously, in the everyday workplace for a recent grad, NAI is exceptionally good at taking over localized cognitive tasks.
Right, the cognitive drudgery we mentioned.
No, it displaces young workers today by hollowing out the middle-skilled jobs. It takes over the analytical and administrative tasks, the exact tasks entry-level grads rely on to learn the industry. It leaves only the very low-paying manual jobs and the very high-paying executive jobs. It removes the latter.
I'm just not convinced by that line of reasoning because it completely ignores the fundamental taxonomy of how humans and machines actually interact on a task level. I mean, there is a brilliant concept in the research called conjoined agency.
Marie's taxonomy.
Right, Marie's taxonomy, which is defined as the shared capacity between humans and non-humans to exercise intentionality. And Murray breaks this down beautifully into mechanisms we can actually measure. Agency over a task is split into two parts. You have action selection, which is deciding what to do.
Right.
And protocol development, which is figuring out how to do it. The research demonstrates that if the agency over action selection rests with the human, the technology empowers them. Think about a young attorney using automated legal discovery software. The junior lawyer decides what the legal strategy is. That's the action selection. The AI software figures out how to scan 3 million emails to find the relevant keywords. That's the protocol development. The human decides what needs to happen. The AI figures out how to do it optimally. That is the very definition of augmented intelligence for young talent. It makes a 25-year-old as productive as a whole legal team used to be.
That is a very compelling framework, I'll admit. But have you considered what happens when the technology takes over both? Because that is the reality for an increasing number of young workers. When we look at the foresight methodology targeting the future of work in the 2050 horizon, a very different, much darker picture emerges.
You're talking about the interdisciplinary study using the Tiamat Foresight software, right?
Precisely. And it's important to understand how they arrived at their conclusions. 13 researchers from computer engineering, economics, public management, they didn't just sit in a room and guess what 2050 would look like. They used a rigorous method called futures wheels.
Basically mapping out primary and secondary consequences.
Exactly. Imagine drawing a circle on a whiteboard with a central technological trend, say, widespread use of AI logistics scheduling. Then you draw spokes outward to the immediate consequences, like hyper-optimized delivery routes. Then you draw spokes from those to the secondary consequences, tracing the ripple effects outward over decades to see the macro impact on the workforce.
Right.
And one of the most prominent, unavoidable trends they identified for young workers was more flexibility in the employment contract.
Which many university students actively desire. I mean, flexibility allows for remote work, gig economy participation, non-traditional hours that fit around a person's life.
But in the context of advanced automation, flexibility is often just an academic euphemism for precarity. When an algorithmic management system dictates your shift schedules, when it optimizes your delivery routes down to the minute and monitors your productivity down to the keystroke, the young worker loses action selection.
Well,
the technology takes over both the protocol development, how the job is done, and the action selection, what happens next and when you do it. Murray's taxonomy explicitly calls these arresting or automating technologies.
I'll admit, the algorithmic management aspect makes me uncomfortable. If a machine defines the protocol and the action, it is hard to argue the human is still the one calling the shots. But doesn't this bring us back to mechanization? Are you saying the human graduate just becomes a machine?
Think of it like an airplane autopilot. When the human pilot sets the destination and the AI flies the plane to get there efficiently, that's augmentation.
Right.
But what we are seeing in the 2050 foresight projections is a shift. The AI starts deciding which airport to fly to based on algorithmic fuel and routing optimizations. And the human pilot is just sitting there to physically push the buttons the AI tells them to push. The human becomes nothing more than a fleshy actuator for a digital brain.
Oh, wow.
Their decision-making power is completely revoked. We stop being the masters of the tool and become biological extensions serving machine-driven protocols. When an AI fires a gig worker because they deviated from an optimized route, who has the power? The human has been mechanized.
I hear the severity of that scenario, and it's sobering. But I think we need to look at the broader trajectory of human ambition and progress. You are describing a painful transition period, certainly. But let me ask you this.
Go ahead.
If historical automation freed us from grueling physical labor so that we could pursue cognitive work, why wouldn't AI's automation of routine cognitive tasks free young talents to pursue even higher-level, strategic, creative, or empathetic work? Yes, the AI might handle the routing or the data sorting, but that completely reshapes and ultimately elevates the human role in society. We move from being data processors to being strategic thinkers.
That assumes that higher-level creative and empathetic work will be economically valued and widely available to the millions of young people displaced from those entry-level cognitive tasks. The foresight studies for the 2050 horizon heavily caution against that kind of technological utopianism.
It's not utopianism, it's just historical precedent.
To assume that every grad whose administrative or analytical job is automated by narrow AI will smoothly transition into being a creative director or a strategic philosopher, it just ignores the harsh economic realities of the labor market. The benefits of AI-driven productivity gains have historically pooled at the very top, not with the new entrants to the workforce.
I absolutely acknowledge the friction in the labor market. A transition of this magnitude requires robust education initiatives in our universities and an evolution in how we structure social safety nets, but the fundamental nature of the technology itself is still complementary.
Is it?
Yes, because the AI cannot operate without the data we generate, the parameters we set, and the human judgment we provide when edge cases arise. The human element becomes more valuable, not less, because intuition, context gathering, and strategic judgment are incredibly difficult to automate.
Are they difficult to automate or just not fully automated yet? Even if they remain uniquely human, the daily reality for a young professional interacting with an arresting technology is a massive loss of autonomy. When a system can correctly interpret external data, learn from it, and adapt flexibly to achieve a goal, it begins to manage the human. That is why the researchers explicitly warned that the main challenge with AI isn't the mythical singularity. The challenge is the immediate quality of our interaction with the machine today.
On that point, we actually find significant convergence. We both agree that the apocalyptic AI narratives and the fear of a looming singularity are distractions. They pull focus away from the urgent mechanical conversations we really need to be having right now about agency and workflow.
Absolutely. Whether people fear a sci-fi supercomputer or they hope for a utopian artificial brain to solve all our economic problems, they are avoiding the hard work of regulating narrow AI right now. The central challenge of our time is indeed managing the quality of human-machine interaction. We have to make deliberate choices about who holds agency over work protocols before those protocols become permanently entrenched for the next generation.
Well, to summarize my perspective on this, AI is profoundly changing the workplace, but its true value lies in human-machine complementarity. When we reject the myth of total human replacement, we can see AI for what it truly is. It's a revolutionary, augmenting force. As long as we ensure that humans, especially our young talents, retain the agency of action selection, AI will increase our productivity, help us conquer incredibly complex problems, and ultimately empower us to work smarter.
And from my vantage point, the risks of worker alienation, mechanization, and significant job displacement are real, they are immediate, and they are backed by robust foresight methodology. Narrow AI is fundamentally challenging human agency in the workplace by seizing both action selection and protocol development. If we blindly embrace automation under the guise of productivity without protecting human decision-making power, we risk turning our young workforce into biological extensions of machine protocols, stripping away the autonomy of human labor.
It is a dense, highly complex issue, and it demands intellectual charity from all sides as we navigate the future of work. The foresight methodology targeting the 2050 horizon offers so much more for us to explore regarding how society might successfully structure these coin-joined agencies.
We will leave it to you, the listener, to form your own conclusion. As we continue to hold these remarkable new tools in our hands, we have to ask ourselves, are we shaping the tool to build a better future, or is the tool beginning to shape us? Thank you for joining us on the debate.